The reason why you can't afford to buy a home in 2025 and you're still living at your parents' house is because you drink Starbucks, you have a cell phone, you have a Netflix subscription, and you buy clothes.
People are under the impression that as long as you own a home, you're winning. And that is not the case. If you are owning a home stressed out because by the end of the month, you have nothing left, you cannot afford that. That is what we call you bought too much house.
Young people just don't want to work. They don't want to work hard, and that's why so many young people can't afford to buy a home. Do you know how annoying it is for me to hear that as a realtor? Let's be very clear. A lot of our grandparents and our great-grandparents and Gen X and baby boomers, they bought their homes for 13 blueberries and a handshake.
It must be nice to own one of these nice houses. And I'm just really sitting here thinking, because I'm in the housing market and have been for a year. This shit is insane, bruh. You're telling me that when you bought your house, you were probably looking at the hundreds. 160, maybe 180. And now when you decide to sell your house, you can increase the value by $100,000. So now I have to pay near $300,000 for a home that you paid half of. How is that affordable, bro?
If you're looking for a place to live right now, you face a radically different housing market than people did even just 15 years ago. Home prices have gone up, rents have gone up, evictions have increased, and a whole group of would-be home buyers has been priced out of homeownership, becoming permanent renters.
Starter homes are disappearing from the United States. In the early 1980s, as many as 40% of the new homes built were considered entry-level. By 2023, just 9% fit the criteria.
Give it another 20 years and literally no young person will be able to afford to purchase a home, period.
Meanwhile, a slowdown is mounting in the home building industry, which could contribute to the ongoing decline of the starter home.
Both housing starts and building permits, which are an indicator of future construction, have slowed down this fall, and it's not just seasonal.
Apparently, this is the reason why. And it has nothing to do with the fact that home prices have gone up 60% in the last 5 years. And let's not forget that the average rent in the United States is at least $2,000. No, it's a cell phone and Starbucks. I agree with people to some extent that if you want to buy a house in 2025, you need to cut back on spending and make some sacrifices. But if giving up Starbucks was the answer, no one would be drinking it. And it's not like people in the 1930s didn't have things to waste their money on. But the big difference is back then, essentials weren't eating up 60% of their gross income. Today, if you add up your shelter costs, your food, your gas, you're gonna be 60% into your paycheck. There's not much left to play with, let alone save. And I know comparing with the Great Depression is oversimplistic, but reading some of your responses is just shocking. Do you people not realize the housing crisis we're currently going through right now? There are literally engineers in the comments section that can't afford to buy a house, and that's not right. But yeah, keep blaming the $7 coffee and the avocado toast.
This guy's cooking with hot fish grease, okay? And let me tell you why. I'm gonna tell you about my personal situation right now. Personally, I'm looking to buy a house, okay? And I am the ideal candidate, so to speak, if you will. And let me tell you why. So he mentioned how a lot of people say that if you want to be able to afford a house, cut back on subscriptions like Netflix and Amazon Prime, and cut back on going out to buy expensive coffee, and cut back on all, buying clothes, things like this. Guess what? I don't buy clothes, I don't buy expensive coffee, I have barely any subscriptions. I don't have Netflix, I have Amazon Prime, and that's because I have Amazon Prime, so I have Amazon Video. Another thing is I have no debt. The only debt that I have is on a couple rental properties that I own, and they pay for themselves, they pay the debt themselves. So that's not even my personal debt. Aside from that, I don't have a car debt, I don't have student loan debt, I don't have credit card debt, I don't have personal loans, I have zero debt to my name. 3, I make a decent income. When I say decent, I say maybe 30 to 40% more than what the median income is for the United States, whatever that is. I think it's like maybe 60,000 is the median income. I make a good amount more than that. Do I live in a high cost of living area? I'd say I live in a medium to high cost of living area. I have more than enough to put 20% down and have money in reserves, and I have really good credit. And I say all this not to brag, trust me, I don't say all this to brag. I say all this to say because even with all those things being in place and being true factors, I still feel that I cannot comfortably afford a house. And this is a median price house. The median cost of a house now is about $400,000. I think that might be nationwide. And that's about the median cost in the area I live, maybe closer to $450,000. With that being said, the monthly payments on that house, once you factor in property taxes, insurance, principal, interest, HOA, utilities, because that's also a housing cost related, right? I feel like I can't afford it. Not only do I not feel like it, like he said, it's going to eat up 60% of my net income or gross income. So then how do you expect someone who has children or who has student loan debt or who has credit card debt or who has car payments to afford a house? Or who doesn't have enough to put 20% down to afford a house, or who makes closer to the median income to afford a house? It seems almost impossible. And the way they're gonna do it is not by cutting back on lattes or avocado toast or a Netflix subscription. Would it help? Maybe to help them afford a utility bill if they cut back on all those things. But is it gonna really move the needle? Not really. So this issue is a bigger issue of the economy, of inflation, more so than it is of little expenses here or there. Even if your coffee is $5 a day, which I think is way too much to pay for coffee, to be honest. No offense to Starbucks or any other big coffee chain, but $5 a day for iced coffee, that to me, that's kind of crazy. Make it at home or go somewhere it's cheaper. But that being said, even cutting back on that is not going to move the needle. So I think he is spot on. Let me know what you think in the comment section.
A lot of people cannot make progress financially because they are house poor and they probably don't even know it. Being house poor is when you own a home that you cannot afford. What does that look like? When you have a payment that is a very big percentage of what you make monthly and all you can afford basically is to pay the mortgage. By the time you cover all your house expenses, you are basically left with nothing. I think it's important to talk about this because people are under the impression that as long as you own a home, you're winning. And that is not the case. If you are owning a home stressed out because by the end of the month, you have nothing left, you cannot afford that. That is what we call you bought too much house. With your monthly income, you should be able to pay your mortgage, set money aside, invest, basically still have a life, right? And not feel like you're drowning and not feel like you can't breathe. The biggest, smartest way to do this is waiting to buy a house when you are ready. Not when the pressure is, when are you going to buy a house? When are you going to buy a house? Oh, everyone buys a house when they get married. Why aren't you? No, you need to buy a house when you're ready. Doing this when you're ready looks like this. You should be debt free. You should have an emergency fund and you should aim to have a really good down payment. 5, 10, 15, 20% down. And that will give you margin. That will give you breathing room. That will make sure you are doing this the right way. So don't let anyone pressure you into this. Buying a house is the biggest expense you're ever going to make, at least for most of us. Make sure you're doing this the right way.
Once again, cooking with hot fish grease, I'm telling you. And she hit major points, some of which I've already talked about, but we can talk about them again because they're important. But before I do that, let's actually define what house poor is. So the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development has an actual definition for house poor. They don't call it house poor though. They call it being cost burdened. Now, she touched on another major thing I think we should all pay more attention to, which is the idea that home ownership is the end all be all, because it's very true. In the United States, home ownership is part of what is traditionally considered the American dream. It's the white picket fence, the 2.5 kids, the golden retriever in the yard, and your home. People look at their home as being the ultimate investment. And to be honest with you, a home can be an investment or it can be a nightmare. And I think the root name of a mortgage, which is what most people have to do to acquire a home in the US, okay, is get a mortgage, I think is rooted in the Latin term of like a death contract. And so really what it is, if you can't afford your home, then your home is going to be a major source of stress and anxiety most likely to you. And she named some things to help you better be able to afford that home. Have a 20% preferably down payment, be debt free. And she didn't say good credit, but have good credit. Have an emergency fund, which I call reserves, same thing. All these things are factors that will help you afford your home. Unfortunately, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I check all these boxes and I still feel like I can barely afford a home. So I think there's a big issue going on nationwide, especially if you live in high cost of living areas. And another factor she didn't mention, which I will say is if you're a single person, oh man, good luck. Like me, I'm a single person. If I had someone who I was buying a house with, let's say I had a wife and me and my wife are going to buy the house together, then and she made close to what I made or maybe a little bit less or maybe a little bit more or whatever. Okay, cool. We can comfortably afford that property. But just me on my own, it's a struggle. So I think that's another factor to take into consideration. And I think that people should not rush to buy just for the sake of making themselves look good to people around them, or because they're given into pressure from their parents or pressure from their friends or coworkers, or let alone coworkers, please, or pressure from, you know, their spouse even. I don't think that's the smartest move. You should do it when you're financially able to. People look at renting like it's throwing away money. I don't think so. I don't personally like the idea of renting myself because I have more of the investor mindset. Like I said, I own property, but even me, I prefer to live at home and help my parents out and give them money, and we have a mutually beneficial relationship that way. Please give them money. Don't sit around and be a bum in your parents' house when you're 30 eating Cheetos and playing video games and not contributing. Don't do that. I think that's completely wrong. But if you're living at home and you're helping pay for some bills, helping pay for part of the mortgage, helping pay for things around the house, etc., and you're having a mutually beneficial situation, I think that's okay until you get yourself in a position to then go buy that property. But just don't be a bum. That being said, if you don't want to do that and you want to go rent, nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with renting until you can afford to buy the house. But the last thing you want to do is put yourself into a death contract just for the sake of achieving some level of status that is external. There's no point in having stressful days and stressful nights and sleepless nights and breaking your back to pay for something just because of the optics of it. So I think she's spot on with that, and I think that she's spot on with the factors that she named to be able to afford the house. But like I said already, even with those factors being in play, a lot of times it still almost feels impossible anyways to really afford a house.
Young people just don't want to work. They don't want to work hard, and that's why so many young people can't afford to buy a home. Do you know how annoying it is for me to hear that as a realtor? Let's be very clear. A lot of our grandparents and our great-grandparents and Gen X and baby boomers, they bought their homes for 13 blueberries and a handshake. I was doing some research for a video I'm posting later, and somebody bought 80 acres of land in the mid-1800s for $100. That's like unfathomable to me. The average home in America today is going to cost you around $400,000. Are there cheaper homes? Yes. Are there more expensive homes? Yes. Duh. But the average American salary does not align proportionally with that home price. Meaning, a lot of people can't afford to buy a home. And a lot of people never will be able to.
Really quickly, I don't like the analogy she gave or the example she gave. She's talking about prices back in the 1800s. Let's be honest here, that's ridiculous for many reasons that I don't need to get into. But I will say that she's spot on with the idea that wages have not kept up to the cost of living. That is true. So the cost of living is increasing much faster than wages are. So wages are not keeping up with it. So the median cost of a house in the US, she said, is $400,000, which is what I said earlier, sounds about right. Wages have not kept up with that. So I think that's one of the biggest issues. Not to mention, not just housing, the cost of food, the cost of utilities, the cost of a lot of other daily essentials have gone up as well. And the amount of money people are making has not kept up.
I find it so interesting that people of the older generations are so quick to put blame onto us as the younger people, as if there is not a systemic issue at hand as far as affordability of housing goes. Nobody is saying that our grandmas and our grandpas and their grandparents, they didn't work hard for what they had. Nobody is saying that. But in comparison to where we are at in our economy and in our financial situations today, you can't even begin to make the case that this is a level playing field. I'm sorry. So if you are in a boat where, you know what, you're like, I don't know if I'll ever buy a home, and that's really disappointing, I empathize with you and I am very sorry. I wish I had more answers given my line of work, but I don't. But just know that you are not the problem. I'm not the problem. They are not the problem. This is so much larger and bigger than all of us individually. And there are going to be people in our lives that just never will understand that.
So she's right. I mean, the issue is bigger than any individual, and I'm not an economist. I'm not an expert in supply chain management, so I'm not an expert in inflation, so I can't begin to address the issues that are from a macroeconomic standpoint as to why this is happening. Obviously, I walk into grocery stores just like you do, and I see that what I used to buy for $2 is now $4 or $5, or I am paying for insurance that is gone up by 20%, or I'm paying for taxes that keep going up, or I'm paying for car insurance that is going way up. You know what I mean? So we all experience those same things together. Why is that happening? Is it supply chain issues? Is it something lingering from COVID? Is it that corporations are just being greedy? I really don't know. Is it that maybe there's just a widening gulf between people who have money and who don't, so that all the people who have money are driving up prices and people who don't have as much money can't afford it? I don't know. There's always been haves and have-nots, so I don't know if that's the issue. I really don't know what the actual issue is. I do know that when it comes specifically to housing in particular, because that's what we're talking about here, After COVID, as we all know, interest rates plummeted to the lowest levels they had ever been in history. And because of that, to borrow money was very, very cheap. And so people flooded to buy houses because they wanted to take advantage of low interest rates. And you didn't have more housing inventory. And you have a lot of restrictions against homes being built to make it very difficult. So what does that mean? You have a low supply of houses, a lower inventory, but you have a lot of people in the market looking to buy a home because money's cheap. And what does that do? Well, it's simple supply and demand. The home prices get jacked up because now people who are selling their homes have the pick of the litter. Someone here, someone here, someone here, a bunch of people looking to buy that same house. Of course, the prices are going to go up. And so now those same sellers now, or those now people looking to sell their homes now, still have short inventory. So even though there's fewer buyers than there was directly after COVID, and even though interest rates are a lot higher, which is another factor, now you have the combination of low inventory, people still trying to sell their homes for super high prices, even though maybe they should drop them now because things have changed a bit, but they're holding on to those higher prices, and you have higher interest rates. So you combine those two things, higher price houses, higher interest rates, it's almost impossible to afford a mortgage now. So people are stuck in place. People like me who are looking to buy are going, do I really want to get in a position to where 50, 60% of my income is now going to pay for a home? Do I really want to do that when I don't have to, right? So I think that's what's going on here, among other things. So I think she's right. It's not really one individual's in particular's fault, but it is an issue that is affecting us all on a broad level, especially those who don't already own. If you were lucky enough to buy, like I bought a home in 2019. I don't live in it. I rent that home out. But I bought that home in 2019 in an area that, and I bought it for not much, like maybe $160,000. The interest rate was, I think, 4.25% until, again, after COVID happened and interest rates dropped, I refinanced for 3.25%. And the monthly payment went way down. That same house now is worth, on paper anyways, maybe $300,000. So what is that, double almost? And the interest rate for that same house would now be double. And which means the monthly payment would be probably double or more, actually. Think about that. Think about that. Has my income doubled? No. So that's what we're dealing with here. So if you bought before, you're sitting pretty. Unless you want to move, then you're like, well, I could sell my house and get a good amount of money for it because I have equity, but then where am I going to go? Unless you're downsizing.
So I'm driving through this nice neighborhood, right? I went to pick up some food. Where is that in the area? And I'm just thinking like, damn, these are some nice houses. It must be nice to own one of these nice houses. And I'm just really sitting here thinking, because I'm in the housing market and have been for a year. This is insane, bruh. You're telling me that when you bought your house, you were probably looking at the hundreds, 160, maybe 180. And now when you decide to sell your house, you can increase the value by $100,000. So now I have to pay damn near $300,000 for a home that you paid half of. How is that affordable, bro? Right now, interest rates are at 6, high of 7. Even with good credit, bro. With good credit. At a mortgage payment for a $375. Let's go $375. $2,500, bro.
Really quickly, she's literally talking about what I just got through talking about. She's talking about how the fact that in the area she's in, homes were $150,000 not too long ago, and now they're going for double that price. That's exactly what I was just saying. She just said interest rates are now at 6-something%. Exactly what I was just saying. And now she's saying that the homes she's looking at are going for $2,500 a month, okay? I don't pay $2,500 a month for the home I'm talking about. It's more, it's less, hold on a second. 25 divided by 2 is $1,250. Yeah. It's less than half of that. So she's saying exactly what I was just talking about. Exactly what I was just talking about. So if I was to sell the home that I'm talking about and then go try to rebuy it right now, it'd almost be unaffordable for me at this point.
$2,500. How can people who are single afford that? Like, this is crazy, bro. I'm 28 years old living at my parents' house, which I am grateful for. I'm not complaining because I've been able to save so much money. I have a career, a full-time job, and I can't afford to buy a decent house. Like, this is crazy, bro. I'm honestly gonna live with my parents for the rest of my life. And I'm just gonna travel and blow thousands of dollars instead of paying rent on $1,000 on rent. I'm gonna just spend thousands of dollars on traveling, because at this point, and I know there's gonna people say like, oh, why don't you just rent in a house or rent in an apartment? Even though that's like what, $1,800 a month, maybe for a bigger apartment, $2,000 a month. Okay, cool. Yes, I can afford that. But I have dogs, and I'm not paying $2,000 a month for under $1,000 square footage and no backyard. Are you crazy? Hell no, bro.
Okay, excluding that last part about the dogs and the big backyard or whatever, she literally just summed up the entire video. Literally summed it up. She's a little bit younger than me, living at home, saving up money. I guess she has good credit, I think she said. I don't know about her debt situation or whatever that entails, but nonetheless, she's literally summing up everything I said. And that's exactly what a lot of millennials are facing. And she's a younger millennial because I'm already younger millennial myself, and she's quite a bit younger than me. So she's in that position to where she wasn't probably even able to buy when I bought in 2019. So she had to buy now. And this is probably one of the worst times to be buying. Now, obviously, interest rates have been higher throughout history, granted, but the home prices were not as high and the economy was different. So she's in a position that I'm in where you kind of feel, I don't want to use the word hopeless because I never think it's that bad. It can get bad, but we're talking about buying a home here. We're not talking about life or death, but it can feel a bit discouraging and to the point where you want to throw your hands up and do what she said. Just stay at home forever, travel. And I don't think you should live home forever anyways. I know she's being sarcastic, but it gets to the point where you're like, do I even want to put myself in a position to where I'm struggling potentially for a home that I don't really need? And she said the thing about the apartment, she can go buy an apartment or rent an apartment rather. Sometimes it seems like in the current situation we're in, renting makes more sense. Again, short term, you don't want to rent long term because in the long term, buying just tends to make a lot more sense. But in the short term, 1, 2, 3 years, maybe even up to 5 years, renting can make a lot more sense if you take the difference from what you would be paying in a mortgage and investing that. If you're not going to invest in, you're going to blow it, then maybe buying makes more sense. But nonetheless, again, she summed it up perfectly. And I think that this is just the epitome of what a lot of people are going through. Not just millennials, by the way. Gen X, boomers, if they're looking to buy right now. Even some Gen Z, if they're old. Of course, some Gen Z are old enough to buy. Gen Z are going through the same issue right now. So it's just the nature of things that we're in. And we're going to continue to ride it out until we see some light at the end of the tunnel. With that being said, guys, I really appreciate you for sticking around this far. If you made it this far in the video, feel free to give the video a like and to subscribe if you feel so too inclined. And until next time, make smart financial decisions.